Welcome to a new episode of the Confrontier. It's been a while since I made and posted one of these videos. Now, I could make up all sorts of excuses about why it took so long, but the very thing is that I just couldn't get around to doing it. You see, making these videos is not necessarily something that takes me very long, even when taking the editing in consideration here. But the thing is that I do need to have time to make them, and that I need to be able to do so with the right mindset, which generally means that I haven't got all sorts of other things that are causing me stress. Now, so far, so much for explaining myself. I hope you're ready to get listening to this new video. This time around, I'll be discussing experts and expertise. Of course, the plain and sane thing here is that you should trust an expert, but that means an expert speaking on the thing he or she is actually an expert at. Now, expertise takes different forms, of course. You could think of the professional expertise about having studied and being hopefully active in the pursuit of a certain academic subject. And expertise can also, of course, take the form of just life experience and expertise in handling certain situations that you might run into in your life. Expertise is always a thing that you should realize is always relative, meaning that an expert on one subject is not necessarily, in fact, impossibly, an expert on just about every other subject imaginable. There are so many things you can know a lot about that it's inevitable that you don't know anything about most other subjects. And the more you know, the more you're an expert, you could say. You realize how much you do not know and how many fields there are that you don't have anything worthwhile to say about. I'll delve into that a bit later. Now I'm going to show you a saying which I've translated from something my father often said. Namely, here it is, and I'll read it out for you too. There's always a Nigerian willing to explain to an Eskimo how to deal with cold snaps. What do I mean by that? By that I mean that you will always find people talking about things they don't know anything about, but doing so with the fullest of confidence. You might well know that term as Dunning-Kruger effect or mansplaining, which is not necessarily the same, but it's closely related. Thinking you're an expert, or at least pretending you are, without knowing anything about the subject and condescendingly explaining to people who know much better than you why they're supposedly wrong. Well, here's something to know. When you do that, you are probably the one who is wrong. And one of the best things you can learn to do in life is sometimes just to simply shut up. Don't say anything. Don't listen to people who think they know everything. Do not listen to the people who speak most confidently about subjects they don't know anything about. Now you'd think that is a very simple thing to do, but it goes wrong. It's a rule that is broken every single time. Now, when we're just talking about general conversations in real life, well, that is annoying and it can be very rude too, but generally the result will not be that terrible, apart from annoying people and making them perhaps avoid speaking to you again. Now, these are things that can generally be overcome. However, it shouldn't come as a surprise to you that what I also want to talk about is the fact that these non-experts are often given a much bigger megaphone, a much bigger platform than they deserve. The very fact is that every person is searching in life, or at least they should be, in my opinion. You're searching for certainties, you're searching for solutions, you're searching to become a better person. In fact, these videos are mostly about that too. That also makes it very convenient and very interesting to find answers to things you just don't know the answer to. And generally, people are taken in by people who speak most confidently about such things. Well, here's the nasty, tricky, unpleasant thing. Confidence is generally a sign of not knowing what you're talking about. Confidence and ignorance go hand in hand, because people who are ignorant generally don't know how ignorant they are and form opinions that they think are great, good, just because they thought of it. Well, just because you like the smell of your own, well, let's say, verbal excretions, doesn't mean that they're necessarily good. In fact, whenever you're confident about something, it's best to doubt it and think of other explanations for what you're seeing. But mostly, the thing is that you should trust experts. Now, of course, as I said before, an expert is a relative thing. Say, if you'd ask Einstein to name a very simple and very obvious example, to talk about physics in his day, well, you'd probably be able to consider him an expert and trust him pretty much. However, if Einstein were to be brought back to life nowadays and talk about physics now, he would probably not be that trustworthy at all, seeing that he hadn't kept up with the subject and would be unaware of all sorts of new discoveries and all sorts of new findings. You would have all reason to doubt him, because he is not aware, he would not be aware of the recent things that have happened in this field. And expertise is therefore something, I hope that example makes clear that expertise is something that isn't set in stone. You can only be and remain an expert if you know that you will always be ignorant of certain fields of your subject, and that you will always have to chase new knowledge and new insights. Otherwise, your expertise, so much as you have it, is going to crumble and is going to turn into non-expertise. Whereas your general non-expert talking loudly, well, blathering loudly about things they don't know about, will generally not be aware of the fact that they need to incorporate new knowledge, and that all knowledge, whenever it's about something that has actually been studied or can be studied, is limited in usefulness just as a function of time passing and new discoveries and new insights being made. Alas, we live in an age where experts are generally overshadowed by non-experts talking loudly. There is, of course, a lot of irony in me saying this rather confidently, but as anyone who experiences life and looks at it critically today will probably be able to attest, it doesn't take much expertise to know that there are all sorts of non-experts, and that's me giving them a polite name, blathering about things they just don't know about, and doing so from a large platform that allows them to poison the well, and that allows them much more respect, and that allows them much more ability to broadcast their non-knowledge than they deserve. And the media generally feel they should at least acknowledge those sayings just because lots of people hear about them. I suppose, otherwise wonder why the media are not reporting on them. Well, the only reporting most of these people, be it on the subject of vaccinations, be it on the subject of anti-conception, be it on the subject of gender, be it on the subject of geography, be it on the subject of biology, the only platform and the only media attention those people really deserve is to be called out for the idiots they are. Alas, that doesn't happen, because there's money to be made from ignorance, and there's money to be made from idiots, and there's money to be made, especially for people higher up, from questioning expertise and experts. Now, don't be that type of person who falls into that trap. An expert is an expert because they actually know what they're talking about, and because they actually have knowledge in what they are discussing. Whereas a non-expert isn't. An opinion is unimportant when we're talking about something academic, or when we're talking about something life-threatening, or when we're talking about something that has a scientific basis. It can be ignored. Now, media don't do that because they generally also thrive on spectacle, and they thrive on clashing opinions and on conflict and so on. And that makes them very willing to give an extra megaphone to people who are absolutely undeserving of it. And this is not something that can be considered neutral or even fun or whatever. We live in a time when scientific knowledge is desperately needed and needs to be heeded in order to deal with all the crises, all the crises we have as a species created, that we are only amplifying and exaggerating and making even worse. But what actually happens is that experts get more and more questioned. And of course, that happens because both because people are told that their opinion is very important, and that their opinion is worth just as much as another person's opinion, whereas that opinion they're generally considering their own views equal to are actually founded on knowledge, on research, are proclaimed by experts who, well, I'll keep repeating it, plain and saying, know what they're actually talking about. And also because there's, once again, money to be made in this. For the companies that are wringing our necks just by keeping up their business, and they're keeping up their method of earning money by surrendering the planet, but also surrendering people, whether directly or indirectly, to their whims and their goals. Well, for them, it's only very convenient that experts are not trusted. It's the same for politicians who are profiting politically or also financially from cultivating non-expertise and cultivating idiocy and cultivating distrust against actual experts. Scientists and just about every other expert on a subject that matters, keep in mind that that's important, subjects that actually matter, are distrusted more and more, even though their knowledge and their warnings should be heeded much more, even more, ever more than they ever were. As I said before, an expert is always a relative thing. For example, you will find scientists and other experts who are confident and can be trusted in their subject of study, talking about something they just don't know. Once you do that, you're no longer an expert. And an expert is not an absolute term. It's not something that can be defined and always applies to every situation. Don't fall into the trap of using the argument from authority. Just to make an example using Einstein again. Imagine asking Einstein about how to solve crises in the Middle East. Well, you would have all reason not to trust his opinion and not to take him too seriously when you find him talking about that. And so it goes for just about every other expert. You can't trust a doctor to know much about geography. You can't trust a climate scientist to tell you a lot about ecology and so on. So when you're listening to an actual expert on something, always keep in mind that they can only be confidently trusted when talking about their actual field of expertise. And scientists and other experts are only human. Many of them actually fall into the trap of thinking their superior knowledge, we can just call it that, in one subject allows them and actually provides them to have superior knowledge on other subjects. They don't. A real expert always knows that his knowledge is preliminary and that it is limited and that it's generally a matter of nuance. So a real expert, without trying to go a true Scotsman argument here, A real scientist, a real expert, a real person with knowledge will generally be able to talk about their subject in nuance, because wisdom and actual expertise can be found in that nuance. Things are rarely black and white, things are rarely clear cut. Whenever you're talking about the intricacies of something, you will run into nuance, into shadowy language, in the sense that we're talking about maybes, perhaps, possibly, and so on. A real expert knows that knowledge is always a relative thing, and that generally, in order to talk about something with confidence, you are generally oversimplifying things. This can make it difficult for people to actually trust an expert, because a real expert will express uncertainty, will express some doubt, and will be making educated guesses instead of just saying a very clear opinion that seems, well, perhaps more believable just because it's so simple. Simplicity can work, but not when we're talking about actual knowledge, alas. I quoted my father before, and I'll cite my grandfather, my paternal grandfather too here. Some people are just professors in the no bollocks, which means they think they know everything, but don't know anything at all. Or, as is sometimes said in English, some people have knowledge that is a mile wide and a millimeter thick, or an inch thick, whatever you want to turn that into, meaning that you will find people talking about a wide range of subjects, and generally confidently too, but who actually don't know anything about the subject they're talking about, or know only the superficialities, know only the things that are on the immediate surface, but haven't actually got the understanding to really talk about that subject. You will generally be able to check whether a person actually knows what they're talking about just by asking, well, things that involve actually understanding the matter. Ask them for nuance, ask them for background, and you will generally see that the most confidently speaking people actually have no knowledge whatsoever, at least not about what they're talking about. Which leads me into another subject, because you might have noticed that I myself have been talking with a lot of confidence, perhaps more than I would advise others of using, though I do think I know what I'm talking about, which helps. I already said that knowledge is also relative. Now, even if a person talks absolute nonsense, talks absolute bullshit, whether deliberately or accidentally about what they're discussing, I would advise you strongly not to dismiss this person altogether, even though it's easy to do so. Because, as I said, expertise is relative, which means you will always find a person actually being an expert, or at least trustworthy, on at least one subject, which could involve their work, for example. It could involve life experience. It could involve whatever you can think of, even though that person discredits themselves by also thinking they're an expert on another subject that they really aren't. So, for example, your conspiracy theory spouting neighbor might actually know everything about how to solve leaks in your house, for example, or might know all about laying a roof, or might know all about computer science. Just because they're an idiot on one subject doesn't mean they're an idiot on everything. Just like you might know a lot about the subject that you're passionate about, but be a complete idiot when it comes to something else. For example, if you ask me to talk about sports, I'd better shut up, because I don't know anything about sports, I don't care for them, which means my opinion and my knowledge, such as it is, on that subject cannot and should not be trusted. And I think I have the knowledge of myself to know that it shouldn't be trusted. So when people ask me, I will generally put in the disclaimer that my opinion can be discarded. And in fact, I would say, and I'd advise everyone to do so in a similar situation, that I better not speak about it at all, because I don't know what I'm talking about in that case. Now, if you would ask me something about making rinky-dink videos on YouTube, well, you could probably trust me a bit more, because at least I have some experience and knowledge in making such rinky-dink videos. And even then, I know most other people on YouTube make much better videos than I do, and that they have much more expertise in doing so. I'm just an amateur, and I fully embrace the fact that I am an amateur and that I cannot say anything really worthwhile about making good YouTube videos. Now, this video might already be running rather long, and I think I've made my point. So, what I would advise you after having watched and listened to this video is to always question people's knowledge, but only do so when you have good reason to. Trust experts, realize that expertise is always relative, and also realize that the people speaking most confidently about something are generally the people who know the least. And please, 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 because that's the most important thing here, be aware of the fact that lots of people who don't deserve it get a large platform to spout their nonsense and to show their non-expertise. I would like to end by probably misquoting Abraham Lincoln here, who once said, "It's better to be silent and be thought a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt." On that bit of wisdom, I'd like to end this video. Thank you for watching, and of course, subscribe and ask questions if you feel like doing so. Bye.